Interested in learning about wine, but not sure where to start? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast. I'm your host, Haley Bowman, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm a wine enthusiast turned wine educator and founder of the Seattle-based wine tasting business, Cork and Fizz. It is my goal to build your confidence in wine by making it approachable and lots of fun. You can expect to learn everything from how to describe your favorite wine to what to pair with dinner tonight, and so much more. Whether you're a casual wine sipper or a total cork dork like myself, this podcast is for you. So grab yourself a glass and let's dive in. Champagne may be the first wine you think of when I say sparkling wine, but there is so much more sparkling wine in the world for you to explore. And what if I said there existed a sparkling wine that was made with as much care as champagne, but cost half as much? Let me introduce you to Raventos y Blanc Spanish sparkling wine. And normally I'd just say cava when referring to sparkling wine from Spain, but you're going to find out why I'm not saying that in part 2 of this episode. So for these next 2 episodes, you'll get to hear my interview with Pepe Raventós, winemaker at Raventos y Blanc, located in Sant Sadurní de Anoia, Spain. I'm very lucky to get Pepe on the podcast, especially during this time. He's in the middle of his harvest. So very, very appreciative of him being here. And I have a feeling after you learn about this winery, you're going to want to try these wines. And don't worry, they are available. I know they're available in the US. I'm hoping they're also available wherever you are listening to this podcast. So besides making incredible sparkling wine, which I definitely want to talk about, Raventos y Blanc is also well known in the wine industry as a winery with one of the longest documented wine growing traditions in the world. It was named a top 100 winery by Wine and Spirits in 2023. It has a wine growing tradition that dates back to 1497. Pepe Raventós, the winemaker, he represents the 21st generation of the family. He joined the family winery in 2001, though his connection to sparkling wine goes back to his childhood when he spent the harvest season in Sant Sadurní, where the winery is. Pepe works with his father to make his grandfathers, who founded the winery in 1986, dream come true, to make Raventos y Blanc a winery of international prestige. All right, without further ado, let's get into the interview. Thank you for joining me, especially during the middle of harvest and a very, very busy time. So I'm very appreciative of that.
I appreciate that you choose to dedicate time to our humble farm, having so many important brands to talk about. So I really mean it.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to learn more. I already got to learn a lot from Arnaud during the tasting, and now, get to hear from you. So I usually start by asking folks, how did you get into wine? But I feel like considering you had a family that was been wine growers for 5 centuries, that might be the answer to the question. So instead, I was kind of curious, did you always think you'd go into wine, or did you try something else for a little bit and come back to the world of wine?
You know, Haley, my passion is social work, and I started my career in social work. But in the 90s, my father was having a lot of difficulties in the family business. And it was my uncle who convinced my father to say, please let Pepe go help you. He's going to work his best because he wants to help you. So, I did 5 years of work outside the wine business. And I actually still continue my passion in social work because some workers from the prison, 20 miles east of us, that help us in the vineyard and in the winemaking, and that helps their insertion into society after the penalty. Then also, we do things in the village. We have a humble small foundation working in the south of Senegal. So, I combine a little bit everything.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I really like that. Diving into kind of being a family farm, what does it mean to you to farm that same land that your family has been on for hundreds of years? I think it's one of the longest, if not the longest, right, wine growing tradition in the world. What does that mean to you?
It's very curious because it means that in a world that everybody makes a business and then sells it and goes to live in the Caribbean, you cannot do that. So it's actually a pain in the ass.
That's fair. You're tied to it. This is yours. It's got to stay that way.
So actually, I don't know if it's very good because you can become a little bit lazy, you know?
That is fair. Well, because I was going to ask, thinking back to like, do you feel like a lot has changed from 1497 to how you farm the grapes now?
A lot had changed in the last half of the 20th century, but not for good. So I think my job is just to recuperate the way that my ancestors were farming in the 16, 17, and 1800s. Where recuperating that old Catalan farm where animal, man, and plant live together in a sustainable ecosystem is really what motivates me.
Yeah, yeah. And talking about that, so Raventos y Blanc is a 100% biodynamic estate. Can you talk a little bit about what that means?
Well, that means that the protagonist is not the winemaker or the brand. It's really about the life in the nature and bringing as much life, as much diversity in the nature, be it poly farming, be it having animals, domestic animals, being taken care of the wild animals, being or trying to have bees to maximize the pollination, take care of the forested areas. Really try to see the system as a whole and understand that you as human are just somebody to try to interpret and take care of it, but not the one that dominates the system, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. Just a quick reminder, if you are not on my mailing list yet, what are you waiting for? I would love for you to join. When you do, you'll get a free shopping guide that has 15 of my favorite wines under $15. Head to corkandfizz.com, scroll down to the bottom, and there'll be a little section where you can join the mailing list. I send out a weekly newsletter filled with wine tips, recommendations, special offers, and so much more. Now, let's get back to the show. So I know biodynamic, a main reason for that is also just sustainability of the environment and taking care of it. Do you also notice a difference in the wine when you're farming biodynamically?
Oh, of course, if not, if not, we would not make it. But it's a good question. The thing is that the more wine you drink, you appreciate that the wine speaks about the place, right? So when you choose to work towards nature and really like stepping back as a technique or method, really the wine I think is more true to the place where it comes from. And I think this is the biggest interest, at least in our opinion, in the world of wine. It's so beautiful to be able to drink grapes from everywhere or so many places in the world, different climates, different vintages, different soils, different winds, different rains, different people, different traditions. And this is what really biodynamics helps a lot. As really the steps you follow to be the method certified are very much into that, into creating your own compost, into working with the moon cycles and the planet cycles to really try to put again the protagonism in the ecosystem. No, so the wines are less perfect, if you will, technically. They are not so precise, and every vintage is very different. But I think that's the beauty of wine.
Yeah, I feel like that's what makes it so special. I think I'm definitely in the fan of that, of like the idea of just making the same kind of wine over and over again, or making something to taste like something else really takes away from what makes wine so cool. I always find it so fun to like, whether it's like a special vintage, I had a bottle that was 30 years old, and the idea that that bottle was older than me was like what was so cool about it, or that I get to taste something from some region of the world I've never visited and I may never have the chance to visit. No, I'm with you. I think that's what makes one of the things that makes wine really special. Thinking about that, do you think every vineyard can become 100% biodynamic, or do you think your environmental factors where you're located in Catalan makes a difference?
Well, the answer is yes. And maybe the big question is the person that is taking care of the vineyard ready to do the biodynamic decision? Because it's more of an attitude towards the vineyard than the characteristics of the vineyard itself. In the past, I would say it has to be an integrated system, like with like multi parcels, multi plots. Ideal, of course, this is ideal. We live in the middle of the farm, bring animals in the farm, but honestly, you can also apply biodynamics principles in a small plot, which is independently located anywhere. It's just about to really have that belief as a person.
Sure. That makes sense. I'm curious, as a family business, I'm sure it can sometimes be a challenge to stand out. So I'm curious, how would you describe your winemaking style and how does it differ from winemakers before you?
As I said before, I think I'm just stepping back from the times of my grandfather, maybe great grandfather, where the first tractors arrived to Spain, and there was an obsession for productivity and mechanization and method, and just trying to go back to the 19 and 1800s philosophy. I've been very fortunate that my parents gave me a lot of time in the Pyrenees, in the mountains when I was kid. So I spent a lot of time with farmers in the mountains, and I fell in love with living in the wilderness with domestic animals, being very, like humble. They not that I am nobody say that I'm humble, but the people were, and they would really use every little part of their soil and their land, and really connected to the winters and to the springs, the summers, the falls, and there was a lot of that. So bringing that into our winemaking tradition has been very fluid, very like something I feel very fortunate to be able to do as a business.
Yeah, yeah. And I know right now you are also making all vintage sparkling wine, like it's all that year. Do you ever run into any challenges? I know one of the main reasons that a lot of places make a non-vintage is they kind of blend from different years because they don't always get exactly what they want. Do you ever feel like the vintage you produce isn't like what you were going for, or is it simply like you're just trying to represent the land so it couldn't possibly be not what you wanted? This podcast is sponsored by Repour Wine Savers. Listen, I love wine, but that doesn't mean I want to drink a full bottle every night. You see, it's always a risk opening a bottle knowing I'll only have a glass or two. But now I don't worry about that at all because I have Repour. These little contraptions will keep your open bottles of wine good for up to 3 months by removing oxygen from the bottle using fancy chemistry. And they're so easy to use. I simply open a bottle of wine, cork or screw cap, just like normal, and enjoy my glass or two. Then, when I'm ready to call it a night, I rip the foil off my Repour wine saver and place it in the bottle in place of the cork or screw cap, and then stick the bottle in the fridge. Simple as that. Then, whenever I grab another glass from that bottle in the future, I just make sure to put the Repour back on as soon as I'm done pouring. It's that easy. Want to give Repour a try? Head to repour.com, repour.com, and use code CORKANDFIZZ for 10% off your order. That's Repour, repour.com, and use code CORKANDFIZZ. No spaces in that, and the and is spelled out, so it's CORKANDFIZZ. Once you have Repour, you'll never have to worry about opening a bottle of wine just for one glass. I mean, heck, now you can try 2 or more wines at the same time and have your own at-home wine tasting. This podcast is sponsored by the Cork Crew Virtual Wine Club. Interested in trying new wines, but not sure where to start? Or maybe you've been listening to this podcast for a while and you love the idea of tasting wine live with me. If that's you, come join my Cork Crew Virtual Wine Club, and you'll get to sip wine with me twice a month while I help you find new favorite wines. The Cork Crew is not your ordinary wine club. This is a community of people who are passionate about exploring new flavors, learning about different wine styles, and having fun along the way. And the best part about this club, purchasing the wine is completely optional. Plus, all events are recorded, and you have access to the full library of recordings as a Cork Crew member, so you can always catch up if you can't make it live. Oh, and did I mention it's virtual, which means you get to do all of this from the comfort of your sofa in your PJs. No need to worry about driving in crappy traffic, finding a designated driver, or spending an arm and a leg on a taxi. Want to give it a try without the commitment? You're in luck. Right now, I'm offering a free class pass to anybody who wants to try out the Cork Crew Virtual Wine Tasting Club. With this pass, you'll be able to join a Cork Crew event of your choosing. No strings attached. I don't need your credit card. I don't need you to sign up for anything. You'll be my guest. Simply head to corkandfizz.com/free class pass to get your class pass and be one step closer to becoming a member of the best wine tasting club around, the Cork Crew. I can't wait to see you there. Now let's get back to the show.
I honestly don't understand this idea of multi-vintages because what is the idea of the wine that you want? It is not about what you want, it's what nature brings you. So as far as I know, Burgundy doesn't mix vintages, for example.
That is fair. And it'd be wild to find a non-vintage, multi-vintage Burgundy wine. Okay, well, let's talk about your different sparkling wines. Can you tell me a little bit about each of them? What makes them different?
Well, to simplify the answer and not bore you too much, I would say we make two different wines. We make a sparkling wine from the lower parts of the property where the parcels have more richness. There is a deposit of clay, so it's more topsoil, and the yields are a little bit higher. We blend this with all the plots that we buy grapes in the valley of the River Anoia in the north of Penedès. And this is the most important sparkling wines that we make that represent the territory like no one else, no? Those would be the Blanc, the Blancs, and the Elite. And then we make a small selection of slow parcels like the Grand Crus of the property, following the tradition of my great-grandfather. And we blend the same plots. And those are wines a little bit more for aging, on the Brut Nature very dry side, for wine connoisseurs that really speak a lot about the potential of this idea of aging capability of the Xarel·lo grape in our territory.
Interesting. I feel like this is probably a question that some folks might have listening to this, but like maybe I don't think a lot of people listening have thought of the idea of aging sparkling wine. I think a lot of people think just to open it and have it right away and have it young. What happens? What are some, the qualities that an aged sparkling wine will develop?
It is true that Champagne has done a great job in marketing, but a terrible job for sparkling wine in the world, including Champagne itself, because it has linked the bubbles into celebration. No? I think a sparkling wine approach, in my opinion, is similar as still white or red wine or rosé. And so it's really, again, about the place and what happened in that vintage. And for me, the challenge as a winemaker is, of course, stepping back, at the same time trying to be clean and precise so that vintage has aging capability and you can enjoy it for years to come. Of course, the more years, the less bottles are, especially if they are good, because people demand them. But I think this is one of the very beautiful things of wine. And as a enologist, this is really maybe the biggest obsession. No? Try to be clean, try to be precise, try to work the details so the wine can travel through geography and can travel through the time, right?
Yeah. What are some qualities that you look for when you're making the wine that makes it more ageable versus other wines?
No, what makes a wine ageable is the grape characteristics and the way it's farmed, and how the grape enters into the winemaking facility. The rest is very easy. You have to be very clean and very precise and not oxidize the must or the wine or whatever. So maybe if I have to say three things for the wine to be great is vineyard, second vineyard, and third vineyard.
Fair enough. I know this was a little bit of a shorter episode, but I really wanted to break this into two so we could dive deep into both being part of a winemaking family and creating a biodynamic estate, which, I think Pepe kind of speaks about it. He doesn't give, I think they should give themselves more credit. It is hard to farm biodynamically and make all these changes in a world where it's all about, like he said, mechanizing everything and making it faster and producing things as quickly as possible so you can make as much money. And that is not what Raventos y Blanc is doing. I actually got to talk with one of the winemaker team actually in my court crew this past weekend, and they told us all kinds of things that they're doing in the winery that are making such a huge impact. And one thing that stood out to me that I'd never even thought of is that they are trying to move from using tractors in the vineyard to using horses, which is absolutely crazy. And at first you're like, what? Are we just doing that for aesthetics, for looks? Like, what's the point of this? But he actually pointed out a lot of really interesting things. And the one thing that I remember specifically is that when you think about it, when a tractor goes through a vineyard, they have to follow the same path every time. They're also incredibly, incredibly heavy. I mean, a horse weighs a ton, right? But a tractor weighs much more than that. And so you're pressing that soil down and the same soil down every time you go down. And so that's impacting the soil that the grapes are grown in. Versus if you have a horse going down the rows of the vineyard, where they step is going to be different every time. And they're not putting as much weight down. So you're not impacting the soil as much as you would with a tractor. Isn't that just wild? Like, that's just one piece of the biodynamic farming. And I think it's just absolutely phenomenal. I also wanted to highlight, again, we're going to talk about this more in the next episode next week, but talking about the sparkling wine that is being made at Raventos y Blanc and how they're focusing on these Spanish varieties. So if you hear Pepe talk about these, I just wanted to highlight them again. So there is Xarel-lo. Say it like Chablis. He told me, say it like Chablis. So Xarel-lo, but it's actually spelled Xarello. And sometimes there's a little dot put in between the two L's. I believe that's the difference with like the Spanish/English version versus the Catalan version, which, speaking of, Catalan is a different language than Spanish. I think it's an offshoot of it. I always saw it as a combination of Spanish and French, since that's where that region is from. But that's why you might notice some things where you're like, I swear I know Spanish. Well, that's because it's not Spanish, it's Catalan. So again, going back to the grapes, Xarel-lo is the one that Pepe talks about the most. And we're going to talk about that a little bit with the Cava as well, and how, oh, I'm not going to give it away. I'm going to save it. Okay, we're going to save it for that. But Xarel-lo, and then the other indigenous grapes, Macabeo and Parellada. And these are the three Spanish grapes that are known for making cava. They're also being used in Raventos y Blanc sparkling wine, but they're choosing not to use French varieties. And again, we'll talk about this a little bit more in the next episode. I do want to point out that as amazing as these wines sound and how intimately they are farmed and created, you can find these wines for under $30, which it just blows my mind. And I've had the Blanc de Blanc. Highly recommend. It is absolutely delicious. And actually, one of the latest vintages of the Blanc de Blanc has another new grape in it, or at least it was a new grape to me. It is the Malvasia de Sitges. I'm probably not saying that right. It's Sitges at the end. So Malvasia de Sitges. And this is a totally unique variety. It almost disappeared, but they have recovered it on their estate. They have a very small amount of it. It is complicated in viticulture, but a absolute jewel in winemaking. It has this high natural acidity, and it gives them good volume, good ripening, and this very aromatic complexity. So the Blanc de Blanc, they have put in, I believe, 5% Malvasia from Sitges, and the rest with those traditional varieties, Macabeo, Xarel-lo. I always say it with a Z. I need to say it like the Xarel-lo and Parellada. Anyways, I'm not going to keep you too much longer. I could probably talk about Raventos y Blanc for way too long. Be sure to tune in next week when I talk to Pepe about leaving the Cava DO, why we don't call Raventos y Blanc Cava, what that means to him, and especially considering his grandfather was a part of founding the Cava DO with more of his winemaker friends. But you'll understand why they chose to leave and what is coming next for them in the future. All right, thanks for listening in. If you want to learn more about wine and get a chance to talk to winemakers like Pepe and learning about the wine more in depth, come join the Cork Crew. We are an amazing community of wine lovers, super welcoming. You don't have to worry about fitting in. Everybody fits in the Cork Crew. And you can try your first tasting for free. Just go to corkandfizz.com/free class pass to come check it out for free. All right, cheers.